Right, thank you for joining me. You may have come across from YouTube again or just straight onto BitChute. And I'm sorry sometimes the podcasts are hard to find and that sometimes the system crashes. Just have to be patient, I'm afraid. Right, the big question is what went wrong and what are the good guys going to do about it? So I'm happy to address that. But before we do that, I do have to just say that there's quite a few people out there who are very angry, very cross, and they're blaming me, Robert David Steele, Sasha Stone, Charlie Ward, Young Pharaoh, just about anybody who spoke positively about President Trump. And, we passed on the information that we had, which was accurate. For instance, I think Charlie said that Pompeo would do half an hour tweets and then you're down to 20 minutes and 15 and 10 and 5. And that's exactly what happened. So that was the intel that we were getting. And to say that either of us or any of us were deliberately, misleading people is just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And I think that if people are feeling that way, then maybe it's because, you wanted Trump to win. Maybe you jumped on the bandwagon because you thought he was going to win and now he appears not to have won. You jumped off the bandwagon and you're just having a go at anyone. Well, that's entirely up to you. But, those are the sort of people that will chop and change and they'll just go with whoever they think is going to win. And as Ivanka Trump, I think she did a tweet, but it may not have been available on Telegram, put some very interesting images and text out saying that, it's not over at all. So let's talk about, first of all, what went wrong. Right, let's backtrack a little bit. The day before, on the 19th, I had one of the regular conference calls with the British coordinators, the UK coordinators, that's Ireland, Wales, Scotland and England. And during that conversation, one of my coordinators, she said to me, what can you share with us that hasn't been shared generally with your podcast, and what possibly could go wrong? So what I said, and by the way, if you're in the United Kingdom and you're a member of CC, I'm quite happy for you to, if you want to discuss this further, talk to your coordinator, and as long as he or she was on that call, I think we had about 10 or 12, I can't remember now, but as long as they were on that call, I'm quite happy for them to chat to you about what we spoke about the night before the 20th. And what I said was that the only issues I had was some years ago, a connection with Israel had produced some small, low-yield nuclear devices, small enough to go into a briefcase, not a suitcase, but a briefcase, and they're sort of called a dirty bomb, the low yield and the dirty bomb. And the good guys had believed they'd all been accounted for. And I said to the coordinators on that meeting that just recently, within the last few hours, the issue had come up that maybe one of them was not accounted for. They believed that they'd got everything, they knew where it was, there wasn't an issue. The other problem we've always been concerned about was a nuclear charge on the East Coast. Lots of people, clairvoyant and other technologies have seen a timeline where perhaps the East Coast and the West Coast were inundated with water. And one of the fears from the good guys was that if a nuclear explosion went off, it could take a lot of the coastline away. But that wasn't really my main concern. We'd had maybe 2 years ago, maybe a bit longer, with the Russian or the Ukrainian submarine and an American submarine, if you can remember that, and that was an issue. But this was more about a small suitcase or briefcase type bomb that we would call a dirty bomb, with very dirty pollution. And it had just come to people's attention a matter of hours beforehand that they were not all accounted for. All right, so that's the subtopic I brought up. I've been up, obviously, as you would expect, 2 o'clock in AM British time, on the phone to certain people, and I got as much of them out of them as I could over an open line. They're not going to tell me what they're not prepared for others to hear, but I was quite persistent, and I did want some answers, and I got some answers, which I'm happy to share with you. There's nothing there that I can't share. They were okay to tell me over a telephone line, then I'm okay to tell you. All right, so the plan was to have around about 26,000 National Guard, which they did, have fencing around the whole thing, to put Marines into the underground tunnels that absolutely crisscross excuse me, that building and connect to other buildings. They'd seal that all off, and what was expected was literally to arrest the whole lot. They got them all in one place, and that's why they were going to do it. That's why they put 26,000 troops there. That's why they put the fencing, double fencing, and the tents ready. Those tents were ready to process people. They weren't for the press. They were to process people, sort them out, senators, congressmen, etc., etc. But it never happened. And I had this phone call between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. Kept me quite busy this morning, early hours, and the exact wording were, something went wrong. They weren't going to tell me what it was, not over an open line, so I'm not holding anything back from you. Absolutely something went wrong. And somebody has told me that yesterday, Mike Pompeo, I don't know if it was on Telegram or tweet, had written, well, I didn't expect that. And there's been some shock and surprise around the core team that what occurred was not what was planned. So something went wrong. Now, whether it's because of the information I'd had some 17, 18, 19 hours prior to the 19th regarding this, what we call a dirty bomb, I couldn't tell you. I just don't know. But I'd received that separately. And I can just imagine that these satanic cabal are crazy enough, because you can't negotiate with them. They're just crazy enough to do something outrageous like that. But whatever it was that went wrong was big enough to pull the whole operation. So it wasn't so much that somebody wasn't here or somebody wasn't there, or it was much bigger than that. If you look carefully at the inauguration, you will see that some of it is genuine outside footage and some of it is pre-recorded. Now, to the ordinary person, they didn't see any problem, but remember that ever since but let's go back to the death of Kennedy, people have tried to bring out a cover for what they're up to. Remember that the Bay of Pigs and the Cuban Missile Crisis, a very early stage of Project Bluebeam, was set to literally Cuba is a very Catholic country, or was at that time, I don't know now. But the plan was to have a revolution to throw Fidel Castro out, and they were going to actually project a vision of Mary, the Holy Mother, and then the voice would say, rise up against Fidel Castro and throw him out. And that was the plan, and in fact the ships equipped with that and their task force were already on the way, and JFK realized through some method, diplomatic method, that Russia might just be tipped over the edge and there could have been a nuclear war. And so he actually recalled them, and they'd already set sail. They hadn't gone too far, but they'd set sail and he recalled them. So we've got this early capability back in 60, 61, 62. Then we took 63, the murder of Kennedy, and how they made that without technology. They did that through the normal ways. Then plenty of other things, but 9/11, where a whole drama is created, some of it in the studio, some of it in reality. Now, the good guys were aware of that, and we'd had conversations, and other people, I know Charlie Ward and Robert David Steele, were aware that there was this plan by the bad side to pre-record stuff and put it together. But that wouldn't be a reason why they would pull their operation. Because even if individuals were in two separate locations, the good guys would have dealt with that. So something enormously big happened to derail the whole program. So that's all I know, and that's all they're prepared to tell me until I can actually physically meet somebody. And then there's no guarantee that I'll be able to tell you. But at the moment, that's that. Now, whether it was this dirty bomb, I don't know. But whatever it was big enough to pull everything. All right. Now then, what happens now? Okay, the good guys, whilst they are annoyed and very angry and frustrated, they're not at all downbeat, and that's really interesting. They're not at all downbeat. Now, what I was told in these phone calls between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock a.m. was that they're going to have another attempt. Nobody said I couldn't tell you that, so I'm going to tell you. They're going to have another attempt. And the 2 points I've been given is, one person said it has to all be done by the 4th of March. And the other person said to me later on, that's a bit early. We probably think middle of April. So there is going to be another attempt to actually remove Biden. Okay, one of the things that Trump did before he left, and he was well aware that something was brewing before, the day actually kicked off properly, a great deal of material was declassified. Now, not for the courts, because you can't trust the courts, that's been proven, but for the states. And what being told now is that a lot of people who were too frightened, they didn't stand by Trump, they did what they were told by the bad side, they just didn't do what they could have done, which the Constitution allowed them to do. They've actually now been sent these documents, and I understand there are 2 states now at senior level looking to declassify the result. So that's an interesting point, because I think these people, if they imagined that the military was going to come in and do everything for them, then why should they bother? They'll just sit back. They're not going to get embroiled in it. Could cost them their job, could cost them something worse than that. So they'll just keep quiet, let someone else do it. When it didn't happen, now there's the great base of the Trump supporters have turned on these state legislatures and the governors and all the others, and now there's a move to save their skin based on the information from these declassified documents which have come out over the last 2 to 3 days. So that would be really heartwarming, that it was the people that started a process from the legislatures or the elected side at state level, started a process to overturn the election and not the military coming in. Now, on that phone call, I was told there are 800 senior officers from the rank of general down to colonel who are absolutely standing with Trump. 800, from top star general down to colonel, who absolutely want nothing to do with Biden. And in effect, we now have 2 governments in Washington, D.C. You have the office holder who can sign into law civilian matters, something to do with world affairs. But you have a military government now, and that's in the mainstream media, not as I've portrayed it to you, but basically Biden's team asked for information regarding the sale of the F-35 fighter to Saudi Arabia, and the Pentagon turned around and said, we're not giving that to you. That's unheard of. That's unheard of for supposedly the commander-in-chief to make a request to the Pentagon, and the Pentagon saying, we're not giving you that information. Also, Biden has been told he's not allowed to step foot in the Pentagon, and there have been other elements in just these few short hours where Biden and his team have requested information of the security aspects of America from the Pentagon. The Pentagon's refused it. There are 2 people running the military operation. One, and I can't remember his name, forgive me, is the guy in charge of the FEMA camps that Trump put in the day before, and Chris Miller, who was the acting Secretary of Defense. These 2 are running the show. Now, it doesn't matter whether Biden strips them of the official federal title, the government title. They're still, even if they go into civilian life, they are still going to run the show, because these 800 generals have sworn they're going to operate to these 2, and these 2 report to Trump. That is why, on his leaving speech, Trump said that I will be back in some form or another. And what we believe is that he'll be back as the 19th president, because it was Ulysses S. Grant who was the last one before became corporate America. So, what we believe is that he'll come back as the 19th president, probably set himself up in Texas, while DC is completely bulldozed down. And then we need to bring this financial reset, as we used to call it, in. which is absolutely real. But you can't bring the financial reset in until Trump is there. Well, when the Twin Towers came down, and they did come down, that wasn't CGI, they really did come down. It's many years now, people who weren't there at the time or observing it at the time wonder what's truth and what's not truth. Many people did die and they really did come down. But it was always a big cover for the gold. I think it was Building 9, the gold that was shipped out by the Bushes and Cheney and Rumsfeld. And that gold, it's not widely known, that gold that was shifted out was ready to bring in the new financial world. The very financial reset that JFK had said to his people, I am going to do away with the Federal Reserve, I'm going to do away with fiat money, we're going to do away with this, and we're going to have it all based back on the gold standard. So they killed him. They didn't kill him for any other reason. They killed him because he was about to put America back on the gold standard. So we move along now to 9/11. That gold that was sitting there in the FBI or the CIA vault was ready to be used to move America, regardless of what the president wanted, regardless of what Bush wanted. And that's why that was done. And then the part of the Pentagon that was hit was the naval aspect. And the naval aspect was the part that was holding the documents regarding the gold and moving across to the new financial system. The Navy, of all of the services, has been the one that's been the most closest to the people. And the Army is now very close as well. The Army's moved across. I don't know about the Air Force so much. I don't have much contact there with them. But that's why that explosion took place in the Pentagon, because the Navy was working on that. So the reason for stopping Trump wasn't because he wanted to make America great again. It wasn't because he built a wall across Mexico. All of these were to the cabal thorns in their side. The whole energy to stop Trump, to impeach him, a Russian hoax, or everything, was because he was going to put America back on the gold standard. So when I and others talk to you about the plan, we weren't trying to deceive you or trick you or have a laugh at your expense. We do it because it's the truth. This was the plan. But what's happened is the bad guys somehow managed to hide. I think that it wasn't so much a mistake was made by the good guys. I don't think the White Hats made a mistake. I think that they didn't see something, and whether it was hidden in plain sight or whether it was hidden away, I don't know. But there was some element that they did not see. We've talked about the superluminal computers. China has one, excuse me, the good guys have one, the bad guys have one. So they're all pretty equal in that aspect. But sometimes the good guys have had a jump on the bad guys, and we've seen that over the last 4 years with Trump's point. So what we have is a situation where the White Hats miscalculated, possibly, but more likely didn't account for something. And then when the bad guys said, we have this, whatever this was, it was of such a magnitude they had to pull it. There's no way that anybody with a bad background was going to go into a fortress with 25,000+ soldiers with fences around it. Nobody was going to do that unless they had some form of insurance policy. And that insurance policy was whatever this was that was suddenly revealed. Let's just call it a doomsday device. That might be the best way to do it. You try and bring us down, and we'll not only take you down, but we'll take America down. Under normal circumstances, you would just laugh and call their bluff. But these people are not normal people. They are wedded to a way of life which is all-encompassing, all-consuming. And there are people who would literally do the most diabolical thing possible. And so to preserve life and limb, the good guys pulled it at the last moment. But I can't know what they really had. But that's what happened. And so what the good guys have done now is they've regrouped. I don't think anybody got much sleep last night. And, it's the first quarter. If you look at the financial year, they're looking at the first quarter to remove Biden. And that's the plan, because it was Charlie Ward, and those of you who don't really know Charlie Ward. Charlie Ward used to be in aeroplanes flying gold around the planet. Originally, he started for individuals. So, nearly every airport has a gold vault, and then these people would want to move their gold around. Charlie wasn't guarding it, he was just accounting for it. So 20 bars of gold come on in Heathrow Airport, and 20 bars of gold go out at Istanbul. That was his job. And he had a very good reputation for being honest and truthful, and he never lost a bar of gold in his life, and that's really important. And then his name became up, and government started to be interested, and they said, we're looking at this new reset, this new change, and we want to move gold about because we know we're going back onto a gold standard. So they employed Charlie to move gold around. So he got those contacts, and he was able to confirm to me that something like 34 quadrillion of assets had been taken from the Vatican Bank by Trump's people and are now hidden in hangars, underground sites, wherever they are. They're all hidden around the place. And that's not Biden's team. This is this huge force. I suppose you've got the 800 generals, but you've got this huge force of people who are running separately now to the Biden administration, who are doing that. And I said to Charlie, what I'd heard was that the Italian government, to save its skin, because the Italians were complicit, and let's never forget that 3/4 of American voters voted for Trump, and this has all been a complete steal, a complete fake election. The Italians were absolutely involved in it because they didn't want to go back to a gold standard, because they were being pressured by the cabal. But there was evidence that would have literally put all of the Italian government on the block, shall we say. And so the deal was, the Italian government said, if we give you this money, which the Vatican is holding, we can make that happen. Will you not bring that to public? So Charlie said something like, 12, 13, 14 aeroplane loads. And I asked him, I said, Charlie, if it's paper money, it's valueless, doesn't mean anything. If it's electronic money, unless it's backed to a substance, a real physical substance, that's valueless. But if it's gold, it's valuable. And Charlie said, I'll tell you what it is. It's money and paper money. It's gold and it's artifacts. Now that's really interesting, because an artifact could be a ring, a jewelry. It could be a painting. It could be something stolen, 3,000-4,000 year old subject that's sort of priceless value on it. The Vatican Library, like the Alexandrian Library of old, contains some most amazing stuff which we, the general public, never see. So what we've got now in Washington DC are two governments. You have the office holder, which presently is held by Biden, who can sign into law domestic and some foreign policy. And you have the United States military, which are purely running on intelligence and military aspects, and the two do not communicate across that boundary. Now, why have they taken that stand? Well, they've taken it because they know that Trump won the election, but they're taking it because they are following the Constitution. If somebody comes into office and they do so illegally, then the military are not obliged to follow the Constitution and follow that person. That person is not their commander-in-chief, because that person should never have been there. And that letter was not a fake, though I put it on my website. Lin Wood shared it on his and a couple of others. I was sent that at 5 o'clock British time with the note, do not share this until 6 p.m. British time. And then just before that, Lin Wood put it up. And I thought, right, well, if he's putting it up, I'll put it up. And it just said, you know that I won. Joe, you know that I won. Which is a very, very powerful thing. Trump's a very big man. He could have written a whole load of stuff, couldn't he? But he basically just said to Joe, you know that I won. saying that you know the truth, Joe, and it will come back and bite him. And that's known throughout the Pentagon. It's known throughout the White House that Trump actually won. So there are two governments now in the United States of America, and we're going to see more of that. You're going to see world leaders embarrassed to be with Biden. You're going to see 3/4 of the American people ignore Biden. Do you know that the White House pulled the video of Biden and the cavalcade because so few people watched it and the dislikes were so high? And you know that when Biden was in the cavalcade, all of the soldiers lining the roads turned their back on Biden. He does not have the control of the military. He does not have them. And he won't try and do what Obama did. Obama went through and sacked loads of generals. He's a fool. Biden's a fool if he does, because he'll start off not a civil war, but he'll start off a military coup against an unlawful office holder. So I think Biden's hands are quite tied. So one person said, we're going to move against him and it'll be done by the 4th of March. Another person said to me, that's a little bit early, I think middle of April. But certainly the first quarter, because that is the new financial year. And they do want to get this new financial system in, which must come in on the financial system. And I asked and said, look, there are people who've got, ordinary people who've got money in banks. There are people who've got, money in this, that, and the other. What's going to happen? And it's a like-for-like basis, so no one's going to lose out. So if you've got $100 or £100 in the bank, that still stays. There's not going to be, it's not going to disappear. As people were saying, paper money is going to become valueless. It will be honoured. So if we go to this system, and it does look like we will go to this system, if you got 100 of something, you still got 100 of something. So that was a really important point. All this highfalutin talk about this, that, and the other, but what people actually want to know is, am I going to have the same amount of money? Is it going to be negotiable? Is it going to buy things? People sometimes forget to address the very basics that people want. So nobody that I spoke to between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the morning was downbeat. They were angry, they were frustrated, but they believed that the decision that was made not to go in and take everyone out was the right decision, because they believed that the threat was credible. Whatever that threat was credible. And so they're just going to the next plan. And I've told you what the plan is. I've always thought there were about 5,000 people who what we call Trump's team, right across the world, working not directly to Trump, but working through people. And Charlie Ward said to me, I think it's more like 8,000. Well, I can tell you that whether it's 5,000 or 8,000, those people didn't wake up this morning crying into their Kleenex tissues. They woke up this morning saying, right, what do we need to do? How are we going to work this? There is too much of a momentum. It's too well embedded. And if 3/4 of the American population voted for Trump, then there is a solid base for truth and justice. Remember, we're not dealing with gangsters. We're dealing with satanic cabal gangsters. People who, even in the gangsters of old, on the Al Capone stuff, there was a code of honor, there was a code of conduct that gangsters had. These lot don't have any code at all. And so it's not a straightforward fight. And it is the people who will suffer. So I'm guessing, and I am truly guessing, that whatever this thing was that threw the good guys off, it wasn't, we will hurt you, the military, or we will blow this ship up, or we will do that. We would hurt the people. And the whole point about Trump is he's tried to do things legally. He's tried to work for the people. And if the threat, as I believe, was against the people, then he had to put his own ego aside. He had to take the hit for it not happening, rather than perhaps a very, very, very serious circumstance that would gravely hurt the American people. And so, again, I think what we've seen is a very courageous man, a very big man. He's not going to go back into private life, I can assure you. And the media were wrong. They said that he flew straight from his goodbye to Florida. He did not, but I can tell you he flew to Washington, D.C. Well, he was in D.C., he just went across the other side, because that's when the operation was supposed to take place. And when whatever it was happened, it was all cancelled. He then had to go quickly on to Florida. But he's not out of the picture. They are still reporting to him unofficially. He's still being kept informed. And you have a crazy situation now of two governments in America. So, it's a very frustrating, very sad time, because all of us who are good wanted this concluded and over with. We've all been sort of living on tenterhooks, as we say here. I don't know what other countries say, but we've all been living on our nerves because we knew it was a really big deal, the biggest deal maybe of our lives. And it was all ready to go. It didn't happen. So what do you think? All these people are going to go away? No, they're not. They're going to redo it. But as the person I spoke to at 1:30, 1:45 in the morning, agreed with me when I said, you, meaning the person on the phone, you will never have this golden opportunity again. You will never have an opportunity where so many people will be in one building, whoever they were. You'll never have that you can grab them all in one go. You now will have to go to different locations. And the person said, yes, we realise that. We will never have that opportunity again. But that doesn't mean that they don't work it out and they don't plan it and they don't try it. So the message is, it's a setback, but the towel's not been thrown in, because it can't go back. First of all, the operation is too big. There are too many people, too many signed up, too long in the making. And the office holder sitting in the White House is not as strong as either Clinton was or Obama was. This is a very weak office holder. I don't mean the man himself, I mean the office. You saw the inauguration if you had the stomach to watch it. I certainly did, because I was expecting someone to come and put a hand on his shoulder and say, you're under arrest. But they were not happy. Their faces were somber. I'm not saying they were always looking over their shoulder, but they were not happy. They weren't celebrating, because they know it's not over. They know that they swung that by just about made it. They got it through. And if you look at these people, they only smiled when the camera was on them. So when the camera was panning across, they weren't just sitting there respectful, they were uncomfortable. And the reason they're uncomfortable is because there's a war. And this war is not ending, and it is going to go on. They're saying that the blast in Madrid was a gas explosion, just like they said that the Nashville was something else and something else. And that's all very quietly been swept under the table, hasn't it? There's going to be more issues that are going to come up. This is a war that won't go away. It won't go away until the office holder, Mr. Biden, is out of the White House. I think that the history of DC is so bad that when Trump comes back, and I absolutely believe he will, he's not going to go and sit there again. I think the feeling, the whole taste of that place now is so awful that he'll set something else up. Historically, it should be Texas, but I can't say that it will be. And there's going to have not just a makeover, but actually take a wrecking ball to the whole of that government aspect. It's all laid out in a satanic grid, as you all know, and it just needs to be completely redone. And as Charlie Ward said, because he's an expert on the money side, he said that I really don't want a single cabal person involved in this new money transfer. So it's not over. It's just a continuation, and that's such a shame, because we wanted it over. We're all pretty exhausted physically. But where do we go? We can't go back. We have to go forward. So that's it. And I'll just reiterate that nobody was trying to deceive anybody. Nobody was trying to string anybody along. We had credible intel. We were following it through, and nobody was more shocked nobody than the President of the United States, Donald Trump. And he didn't stand there and start blaming people. He didn't say, well, the military let me down or this let me down. He didn't even actually say that the legislatures let him down. He had side digs at it, but he's such a big man that he's thinking, well, that's pointless. What we've got to do is get this done and get it through. And he's not going away. Remember his last words, I will be back in some form or some shape or form or another. In other words, he may be back as a 19th president. So the fight goes on, and let's just see the mistakes that this man makes. But watch for this dual government. Watch for the different split between the military that now run America from the military side and Biden who runs the domestic and some foreign side. All right, so, oh yes, and the other thing I was told was that the military told the president, I'm always going to call Trump the president because he won the election. He is the president. They told him to go away and have a vacation, that he'd done a fantastic job. No one else could have done what he'd done. And they've said, we've got it here. We'll do what we need to do. Don't worry. You go and have a vacation. You deserve it. And then you come back and then we'll talk. So that's what we heard there. So listen, God bless. It's not over. And just get back on with it. Take care.